Why you feel lost without something to hold on to. There are moments when the mind does not need a final answer. It just needs something to hold. A thought, a direction, a meaning, a possibility, a small piece of certainty that makes the inner world feel less open. Because when there is nothing to hold on to, the mind starts feeling as if it is falling. Not always dramatically. Sometimes it is quieter than that. A loss of position, a lack of ground, a feeling that you do not know where to place yourself inside what is happening. And this is where the need begins. The need to define the situation. The need to understand what it means. The need to know what comes next. The need to find one thought strong enough to make the movement stop. But often, what you are looking for is not truth yet. It is contact. Something solid enough to touch. Something stable enough to lean on. Something that tells the mind, you are not lost anymore. And once the mind finds that thing, it can begin to confuse holding on with seeing clearly.
This is why not having something to hold can feel so uncomfortable. The mind is not only dealing with the situation itself, it is dealing with the absence of shape. There is no clear place to stand, no stable meaning, no final direction, no sentence that makes everything feel organized. And when there is no shape, the mind starts searching. It looks for signs. It looks for explanations. It looks for patterns. It looks for anything that can reduce the feeling of being open. Because openness can feel like danger when the system is asking for ground. So even a weak thought can become attractive if it gives the mind something to hold. Even an incomplete answer can feel important if it makes the inner movement slow down. And this is where the pattern becomes subtle. You may think you are trying to understand, but underneath, you may be trying to stop feeling lost. The mind reaches not only for clarity, but for something solid enough to make the uncertainty less painful.
This is why the mind can become attached so quickly, not because something has been fully understood, but because something has finally reduced the feeling of being lost. A thought appears, and suddenly there is less space, less movement, less confusion, less inner exposure. The mind can point to something again. It can say, this is what it means. This is where I stand. This is the direction. And even if that thought is incomplete, it can feel powerful because it gives the system a position. This is the emotional pull of having something to hold on to. It does not only give you an idea, it gives you a place where the mind can stop wandering, a place where uncertainty feels smaller, a place where the body can breathe a little easier. And once the body feels that small relief, the thought begins to feel more important than it may actually be. Because now, letting it go would not feel like losing a thought. It would feel like losing the ground again. This is why letting go can feel so difficult. The mind is not only losing an idea, it is losing the thing that made the inner world feel less empty. Even if the thought was not complete, even if the answer was not fully clear, even if the meaning was only temporary, it gave you something. A frame, a direction, a sense of control, a feeling that the situation was not completely open anymore. And when something gives the mind that feeling, the mind begins to protect it. It does not want to return to the place before it, the place where nothing was fixed, the place where everything was still moving, the place where you had to remain inside, not knowing. So the mind holds on, not always because it believes deeply, sometimes because it does not want to fall back into the open space. This is the hidden fear. Without that thought, without that meaning, Without that thing to hold, the mind feels as if it has no ground.
This is why the mind can prefer a familiar meaning, even when that meaning keeps something unresolved. Because familiar meaning does not always give clarity. Sometimes it only gives continuity. It allows the mind to keep holding the same shape, the same explanation, the same position, the same way of understanding what is happening. And continuity can feel safer than openness. The mind says, at least I know this. At least I can hold this. At least this gives me some kind of ground. But the ground may be too narrow. The explanation may be too small. The thing you are holding may be giving you stability while preventing you from seeing what is outside it. This is where holding on becomes dangerous. Not because holding on is always wrong. Sometimes you need a little ground. Sometimes you need something stable before you can look deeper. But when the mind starts needing that thing too much, it stops using it as support and starts using it as a wall. This is why feeling lost does not always mean you have no direction. Sometimes it means the old thing you were holding is no longer enough. It used to give shape. It used to make the situation feel clear. It used to give the mind a place to return to. But now, something in you has started to notice its limits, and that creates tension. One part of the mind wants to keep holding on. Another part knows the thing you are holding does not explain everything anymore. So you feel lost, not because there is nothing there, but because the old certainty is weakening before a deeper clarity has arrived. This is a difficult space to remain inside, because the mind wants to replace the lost ground immediately. It wants another answer, another meaning, another object to hold. But sometimes, the lost feeling is not a failure. It is the space between an old structure and a more honest one. This is why you may rush towards certainty, even when part of you knows you are moving too fast. The mind does not like the suspended place. It does not like being between meanings. It does not like feeling that something old no longer works, while nothing new has become clear enough to replace it. So it grabs. It grabs a conclusion. It grabs a belief. It grabs a familiar explanation. It grabs anything that can make the inner space feel less open. And the moment it grabs, there is relief. The mind feels less exposed. The body feels less restless. The situation feels less shapeless. But this relief can hide the movement that came before it. You forget that you were not only searching for what was true, you were searching for something that could stop the feeling of being lost. And when that is not seen, the thing you hold can become more important than the clarity you were looking for. The point is not to stop holding on to everything. That would be another form of control. Sometimes you need something to hold. A direction, a thought, a small piece of meaning, a temporary ground that helps the system stay present without collapsing into confusion. There is nothing wrong with that. The problem begins when the mind forgets that it is holding something, when the support becomes identity, when the temporary ground becomes truth, when the thought that helped you stand becomes the thing you are afraid to question. This is where feeling lost has to be understood differently. Maybe you are not lost because there is no truth. Maybe you feel lost because the thing you were holding can no longer carry everything you placed on it. Maybe the discomfort is not only confusion. Maybe it is the beginning of a wider space. A space where the mind does not have to grab the first stable meaning. A space where you can feel the absence of ground without immediately turning it into danger. A space where something deeper can appear because you did not close the opening too soon. This is not easy. The mind wants contact. It wants shape. It wants something solid inside the movement.
But clarity often begins before there is anything solid to hold. It begins when you can stay with the lost feeling long enough to see what it is asking. Not, what can I grab? But what am I afraid to feel without something to hold? That question changes the whole movement, because now you are not only searching for certainty, you are observing the need for it. And when that need becomes visible, you may still hold on for a while, but you hold more lightly. You let the thought support you without letting it own your seeing. This is inner cognition.